Okay. Hi, everyone. Welcome to another live stream. I'm your host, Christopher Balkrin. I hope you all can hear me and you can see me and everything's going well. There's a lot to get to today because, on previous lives I've been doing, many of you have asked me specifically about international educated nurses, IENs, and what's happening in Canada today. In fact, many of you have asked me, Christopher, look more closely into the fact that there are internationally trained people coming into Canada while Canadians who are lining up for the same jobs are being denied or waitlisted or told there is no job here. And it's got me wondering what exactly is going on, what's happening, and the information is not nearly as clear-cut as it might seem. And so in this video, I'm going to use a very clear example of what I've been able to find through the research, specifically when it comes to nursing. Now, there is a global shortage of nurses. This is well documented, which I want to get into some more because I'd love to know what you think about this. And get into some kind of some more detail around what the policies that are happening and what the government is doing. And the reason for this is because I truly do think there's something more going on when it comes to the nurses and foreign trained nurses coming to Canada. I'm still perplexed why the government would hire and bring in so many foreign internationally trained nurses while, again, Canadians are still being waitlisted. They're still being denied entry to nursing schools across this country. And so it's something that really surprised me as I dug into some of the research, and that's what I want to share with you today. So I just want to be very clear that, again, this is about us having open and honest conversations about some of the big issues that our country's facing. And so many of you have said we need to be talking about temporary foreign workers, international students coming to Canada, and the fact that we're not against them as Canadians. That the reality is that there are jobs that Canadians are looking for that they can't find. And coming off the heels of everything that was happening today in the news, the United Nations, some of the stuff Trump said, that's a separate topic altogether. But I will say that immigration is at the forefront for so many Canadians. We are a very open and accepting country for immigrants. I grew up in Canada. I never really experienced what some would consider racism. Maybe people were racist to me. I never felt that. I never felt othered, outed, segregated, etc. Maybe other people felt that. I never felt that in Canada. So for Canada to go from a country that's very accepting of immigrants, so accepting, if you look at stats, we are head and shoulders above the rest of the world when it comes to immigration acceptance and acceptance of immigrants. But the fact that Canadians here are feeling that and are wondering what's going on, that should be the biggest reason why we should pause and start thinking about immigration and some of the policies that our government is making. So I think it's important that we do that. I think it's also really important that we get into some of the nitty gritty so that we do this in more detail and we do this with more justice. Now, I'm going to read some of the stats, some of the comments here. Sorry, folks, for just grabbing my phone off the charger there. Some are asking about, hey, Native Warrior, haven't seen you in forever. Some are asking about Palestine, and I think we should be talking about that. I agree, but I will save that for another live because I think that's important. Okay, So that was the only comment I saw. Again, folks, if you haven't already, hit that like button, subscribe. My name is Christopher. This is the place where we can talk openly about big issues that no other place on the internet is talking about. And I think it's important that we do this as Canadians, and we do this with as much justice as much as possible. Okay, so I wanted to begin letting everyone know that there is high youth unemployment. So if you're less aware, there are approximately, and this number, it varies, but it's very important that we get those numbers correct. CIBC put out a report at the end of August. Unemployment amongst youth 18 to 24, 14.5%. 14.5% is youth unemployment here in Canada. We haven't seen these numbers since 1998, 2010. Excuse me, we have not seen these numbers at all. And for students in high school, it's actually closer to 18%. Now, why do I bring these stats up? Why is it important that we have youth unemployment stats? It's because the numbers that are cited for youth unemployment, they're not actually doing it justice. They're just kind of like this mark in the sand. So when we say 14.5%, the number's actually much higher because, as we know, most youth are unemployed or underemployed, right? So there's a lot of youth who are underemployed as well. So that 14.5%, think about that as 20%, 25%. That's generally where our unemployment numbers are. When youth unemployment, the official stats are around 14.5. And so that's a big issue for Canada. And I've seen it all the time in your comments. I've seen it in personal life. This is just me walking around the city, that there are less young Canadians, and I say this openly, less young Canadians that are working in the food, service, and retail job sectors that I see. Instead, I see and witness more temporary foreign workers, more international students, and many of you have said the same, that your family members, your friends, your own kids can't find work at the local Tim Hortons, at the local coffee shop, at the local fast food restaurant. And that's a major concern, and the numbers and stats for young people are proving it. Because we don't see unemployment amongst temporary foreign workers and international students to the level that we see young people. In fact, I would be honest with you, I don't look for this. I'd be remiss, and I don't want to make too many assumptions, but assumption I'm going to make, and I'm going to maybe stick by this, is I don't think temporary foreign workers and international students have anywhere close the unemployment rate that Canadian young people have. I would argue that that number is very, very low. So let me know what you think in the comments below if you agree or disagree with that sentiment. But anyhow, Canadian youth unemployment is very high. Now, here's where I want to dovetail into nursing, okay? Because this is very important as I dug into the research. So, the BC government has openly said that there's not only a labor shortage for nurses, but that they're going to need approximately 117,000 nurses by 2030. And this is, 30,000 more than they currently have, say, right now. And there's some vacancies. The BC Nurses Union in 2023 said that there's over 5,000 nurse vacancies, which is really interesting. Let me backtrack a little bit. Before I get into that in more detail, I just wanted to say that I did not know this, but hospitals' biggest expense, as you probably know, is salary. 2/3 of their entire operating expenses is actually on salary, and the majority of that is for nurses. It seems pretty obvious to some, but to me, that took me a little bit aback, given all the expenses hospitals have. But nurses are their number one expense when it comes to operating. Also, nurses are the number one medical practitioner. They outpace every other medical practitioner. So you'll always find a nurse whomever's dealing with whatever situation you're going through. The crisis is real. Hospitals are short-staffed. Nurses are also leaving due to a lot of burnout, especially post-COVID. I think that's really important. I'm going to pause there before I get into some more of the numbers and just read some of your comments. Forgive me for the angle that'll change. Miranda, nice to see you again. I know I need to do more of these lives, so hopefully you all can let me know what I am doing, what we should do next. Let me know. Monty says, suppose we shut down immigration now. What are the immediate and long-term consequences? Really great question, Monty. Let's dive into that. Let me just do a quick scan of what else is going on. Yeah, Native Warrior says, in theory, temporary foreign workers by definition should have 0% unemployment if they are unemployed. Exactly, 100%. I agree with that. Okay, so Monty makes a really good point here. He says, suppose we shut down immigration now, what are the immediate and long-term consequences? Well, the immediate consequence is that Canada may have a lot more job opportunities, that's for sure. But at the same time, a lot of our economies probably wouldn't be sustainable in the short term. I know that sounds crazy to say, but a lot of Canada's, I said this on a previous live, a lot of small towns have more and more access to streamlining temporary foreign workers without going through like a long drawn out process. So if we were to stop all immigration, I think a lot of small towns would feel it, especially those highly dependent on temporary foreign workers, as well as certain sectors will feel it a lot. A lot of employer groups have really petitioned the government to streamline foreign credentials, to increase the number of international mobility program applicants, to allow the more freer movement of labor. So specific sectors like IT and tech, hospitality and tourism, that's where we see a lot of employer influence onto government policy. That would be huge. Short term, that would really do a disservice that would impact our local economies, no question. Long term, this will put us at reputational damage for acquiring as many global skills as possible. Under the Harper regime, they instituted something called the Global Skills Strategy, where they openly put out a strategy to compete with the UKs of the world, the Australias of the world, to attract the best and the brightest. And they had really aggressive goals for international students, specifically in business and IT, etc. And so long term, this would put us at a competitive disadvantage. The Harper government measured this in terms of GDP contributions, and they cited some numbers. I have it somewhere in the report. It's like in the billions. I think it's like 16 to 30 billion. I know that's a big range, but there's a big impact on our GDP as a result of this dependency we have on TFWs and international students. So those are some of the longer term impacts. We would be less competitive. Certain sectors wouldn't probably open up in Canada as a result. And we would put ourselves at a competitive disadvantage with other countries. I see a lot of comments. Let me just make sure that I'm reading them all. Majesty Grace says, I can't help but need to take notes. Definitely. Take notes. I love it. I honestly think the red tape is squashing us all, Canadians and immigrants. Such an interesting point because it is making it very challenging, and it should be. Thanks, Majesty. I wish I'm not really a professor. I just love the deep dive. So thanks for that. I really appreciate it. Hold this talking. I need to make sure I'm getting my water in. Yeah, and thank you for that, Majesty. I love it. Monty says, what's stopping our youth from becoming nurses, doctors, and engineers? Okay, so Monty, this is a great point because this is where I want to talk. This is what I want to talk about right now. Nursing. it's something I didn't really think about until I saw this article. And I wish I could share this with everybody because I'm live on my YouTube and on TikTok. Folks, if you haven't subscribed to me on YouTube, Christopher Balkrin, my full name, Christopher Balkrin, go there and subscribe. I'm live there right now, so you'll see me look at two different screens. It's just because I'm on YouTube, but on YouTube I have like these long form videos where I go into a lot more detail about these topics. Okay, so let me get this article that I found, which is really interesting. Okay, so this is something that, again, I think more of us really need to be thinking about. And this is with regards to what BC is doing. So BC, this is wild. And again, you wouldn't even think this is happening, right? So in 2022, the British Columbia government spent $12 million to help internationally educated nurses get licensed. The funding includes bursaries for 1,500 nurses to cover their application and assessment fees. It's to help them get licensed faster and hope that they'll move in to help address a staffing crunch in the field. It also includes bursaries for these 1,500 nurses up to $16,000 each to help pay for the series of national and provincial assessments required to be licensed in BC. So the minister at the time said the process for internationally educated nurses is complex, it's costly, it's lengthy. This is during a time when we need nurses and we need people to use the skills they have. It's no longer acceptable. We have to rely on internationally educated nurses. And nurses groups said they've heard from nurses in India, in Ireland, in Australia, in the UK, and the Philippines who've struggled with the clunky licensing and registration process. Philippine Nurses Association says it costs a lot. You come here, you try to start your life, people give up. A lot of people have given up because it's just too much. And I want to pause here. It is a lot. Like, living in Canadian cities is very expensive. To live okay, 90 to 100K is probably what's going to get you by. Less than that, and yeah, it is really tough. It's extremely tough. But it's not exactly impossible, but it's very, very challenging for people coming from abroad. Now, why am I picking up this one stat? Like, who cares, right? Like, yeah, that seems cool. But here's the kicker. BC has nursing programs. The University of British Columbia, Douglas College, they have nursing programs. They have 120 seats capped in these nursing programs. They get 500 to 600 applicants on an annual basis to their nursing programs. So Canadian students who want to become nurses are waitlisted or told, hey, listen, the program's full, you got to do something, maybe reapply next year. And yet British Columbia is bringing in internationally educated nurses right away. Like, I'm trying to help make sense in my mind what's going on, but shouldn't the BC government say, hey, in addition to bringing in international nurses, we're going to make sure that our colleges and universities have enough space for every person in BC who wants to be a nurse. So if there's 600 applicants, we have 600 seats. There is no wait list. There should not be a wait list at all, especially for bringing in internationally educated nurses. Because now, this means to me, as I read this, that the government is selectively choosing internationally educated nurses over Canadians. Instead of saying, you know what, like, yes, we're going to accept some because we have immediate needs in the ER and with COVID and everyone leaving. Sure, there's immediate needs and we need people who are properly trained to start right now. But we also need to increase capacity to make sure there's no bottlenecks. And this is so crazy. So here's another stat that some of you may not know. Here in Ontario, we accepted in 2020 to 2021 40% more internationally educated nurses than years past. I think it's actually 46%. Ontario nurses only grew, so Canadian nurses who studied and trained in Ontario only grew by 12%. So we can see the provinces are relying more on international educated nurses to fill urgent gaps 100%. I mean, I don't think there's a dispute on that. I think that's important, 100%. But this reliance on international educated nurses seems to be trumping Canadian nurses. And so I don't get that. Like, I'm trying to square that circle of like, why are we allowing so many in when there's a wait list of students who want to become nurses? Like, shouldn't we just be promoting nursing as much as possible to get as many people in? It could be that even if we were to do that, we still wouldn't get the number of nurses. I get that. This strategy seems to be more reliant on internationally educated nurses, like just getting them through all of the licensing as quickly as possible without thinking about like Canadians. Does this make sense? Like, is my thought and my assumptions logical? Let me know what you think. Okay, let me just read some of the comments again. I just want to see what people are saying. Yeah, no real support. Exactly. Omri makes a really interesting point. Omri says, if I was to become a nurse now, I'd do a quick training in the Philippines and then come back to Canada. How crazy is that? Native Warrior says nurses are underpaid. Monty says, we are doing the same thing we've been doing for 20 years, hoping something changes. That's an interesting point, Monty, because what I've been able to gather from the data is a lot of these changes are very recent, but it seems like this has been going on for a while. Shahand says, UBC could direct funds to the program, but if they don't, why is that the government of BC's fault? So good questions, Sahand. And again, this is where I'd love to know what your thoughts are. So Sahand says, UBC could direct funds to the program, to nursing, but if they don't, why is that the government of British Columbia's fault? Well, because provinces not manage, but they oversee the post-secondary education system. They could easily instruct post-secondary institutions to say, hey, we have this shortage of nurses. We need you to really push nursing. Now, it could be that even maybe they did that, and even with those pushes, they're still not getting the number of Canadians applying. I mean, that's still 100% a reality. And if they're bringing in thousands and there's only 600 applicants, I get that. That obviously there's a shortage. But my question is, why doesn't the province immediately send the funding to BC to open up those seats for nursing so there is no wait list for nursing? Like, I just don't get that. Monty makes a good point here. So we accept thousands of nurses without addressing the near impossible notion of licensing for them. Exactly, Monty. And I think that's the thing. Like, all the things that I've read have been about like fast tracking immigration, fast tracking approvals, fast tracking foreign licensing, just to make them strap on their scrubs to get in here as fast as possible. Omri says, oh, is my mic muffled? Sorry about that. I think my finger was on the mic button. Sorry about that. Sorry about that, folks. So yeah, like, I just think that what's also interesting here is there's a lot of legislation that's coming out now that really puts a lot of emphasis on on foreign trained immigrants that want to continue their careers here. But in the past, it was you had to get retrained, you had to have Canadian experience, you had to have a certain number of years of experience in Canada. That's no longer the case. A lot of legislation has been brought forward that removes those requirements in Canada. Hot Jazz says, I've got a story for you. Tell me in the comments, Hot Jazz. I'm curious to know myself. So all this to say that, so Sahan says, remind us what that legislation is. Okay, so let me get that up for you, Sahan, because Ontario and Alberta also have this legislation, and again, it's about foreign fast tracking foreign work and education experience. I'll get the actual acts up for you because I did a deep dive on my YouTube channel. Check it out, Christopher Balgren. Please subscribe there. I am so close to 1,000 subscribers. So if you haven't already, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, go on my YouTube, check it out. Okay, so hand, I have an answer to your question. So there's a few things. In BC, there's something called the International Credentials Recognition Act. This was passed in 2024. So I'll tell you precisely what it does. So there's four things. One, it removes the Canadian work experience requirements for internationally trained professionals. In specifically 29 regulated professions like engineering, health, education, architecture, nursing, etc. Education, like teaching assistants, etc. So that's really important. It requires these bodies to make their credential recognitions more transparent and accountable. It actually prohibits charging higher fees to internationally trained candidates. And this is also interesting, July 1, 2025, the regulatory bodies are forbidden from requiring Canadian work experience for some internationally trained applicants. So just think about that. We've removed the Canadian work experience for foreign trained professionals. You'd think that there would be a relicensing or retraining when they come to Canada. It's not the case at all. Alberta has done something similar, the Foreign Qualification Recognition Framework. It requires regulatory orgs to evaluate foreign credentials, identify gaps, and does what's called exam bridging. And then finally here in Ontario, we have a lot of different things happening, but we do have the Working for Workers Act that was passed in 2023. It introduces labor law reforms and looks at, again, credentials as well, and then invests in changes to standards there too. So BC, Alberta, and Ontario have very similar legislations in this field. Let me just look at what are the comments. Monty, I have a lot to say about this. Very interesting. Okay, see. And folks, check out my YouTube, Christopher Balgren. Please, please, please subscribe. Okay, so Hot Jazz says, I was a Canadian trained LPN. LPN? Let me know. I left for a while to raise kids. I had a license for 18 years between Alberta and BC. We'll check it out for sure. Thanks, a hand. Subscribe. Helps the algorithm. I taught RCAs in Alberta for Bow Valley College. I am being punished for staying home. I have been waiting in BC with RTTPN and having to take the same testing as the foreign nurses. Oh, I don't know why that was filtered. Some of the comments that TikTok has scrubbed are pretty wild. Okay. Why'd I have to wait so far? 2 damn years. I hadn't heard nothing. License practical. I see. Okay, so Hot Jazz, you've basically been... Oh, something's going on. Hot Jazz, you have basically been waiting to continue, but they've been fast-tracking foreign nurses. Exactly. This is the thing which I don't sidelined. Yeah, like, this is the part I just don't get, and like I'm trying to understand from... like why the Canadian government would do this, right? Like, I get it. I think most Canadians are like, sure, you want to come to Canada, you want to build your career. There's no problem with that. I'm all for that. We need more people here to work and build our economy, and make it amazing and make it great and make it, make Canada great again. I get that. Totally. We need people who are here to work. We need people here who are committed to work and are committed to like working very, very much like to do what they need to do to survive and build and grow our economy 100%. But why would nursing in this case fast track nurses to the point where we're like doing all these other things with Canadian nurses? That's the part where I just don't get what the strategy is. Attracting internationally educated nurses should be in addition to the supports that we're providing to Canadian nurses. And so, sometimes people on my YouTube and my Insta and on my TikTok, they'll message me, they'll throw a comment being like, well, this is the great replacement theory, and they'll throw out these kind of conspiracy theories. And I'm like, no, like this is just like stupid government policy. Like they just don't know what they're doing. Like, you know what I mean? Like that's the way I look at it. That's the way I rationalize these things. I'm just like, well, the government just doesn't know. Literally, the government just does not know what it's doing. And, we're here to fill those gaps to help them see their own weaknesses. But when I hear stories like this, where there are Canadian nurses who are licensed and trained, who have done their work, who are going, and they're getting sidelined or sidetracked for international educated nurses. Or there's a backlog of students who want to become nurses and nothing's being done about that, and they're bringing in international nurses. That's where like the hair on the back of my neck starts standing up, and I'm like, what's really going on here? Like, Canada should be bending over backwards to support its own nurses first, and then also in addition to bring in nurses. Like, it's always, to me, like if I were the Prime Minister, it's like bring in international students and workers in addition to supporting our people, not like one over the other. And so when people start saying like it's the great replacement theory or there's this big kind of like conspiracy, I'm like, no, it's just stupid government policy. But the policy doesn't make sense. And it actually lends itself to this type of conspiratorial thinking. And I'd like to believe that's not happening because I don't think the government is that smart to actually do that. But when I start seeing things like what's happening in BC and Ontario, it starts getting me thinking like, what's really going on here? Because this is something we should be talking about more. We should be talking about like, why are provinces bringing in so many nurses when there's so much demand here at home? Folks, I'm at the 30-minute mark, and I know many of you are really engaged on this topic. So I'm going to keep on doing this topic because it's so important to what we're doing, what I'm doing here on YouTube, on TikTok, on Insta. So if you haven't already, like, share, subscribe. I want you to do that because I'm going to be doing these lives more regularly. I also want you to go on my YouTube, subscribe there, Christopher Balgren, you can find me, subscribe there, like, share, subscribe there too. I also want you to do a couple other things. I want you to share my videos as far and wide as you can because folks, let's face it, nobody in Canada that I know about is talking about these issues. Nobody. There's no podcaster out there. There's no news anchor. There's no one on CBC. There's no one on City News. There's no one in Canada talking about these issues at all. Period. 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 And so we need to do a good job here on TikTok, on Insta, on YouTube to build this community where Canadians are sick and tired of having to censor themselves when they're talking to their friends, their families, others about these issues Canadians are experiencing. So like, share, subscribe, find me on YouTube, like, share, subscribe, share my YouTube videos as far and wide as you can. I'm trying to build a community here because no one else in Canada is doing this hard work. I'm going to keep exploring temporary foreign workers, international students, nurses, so many other sectors directly impacted. I know many of you have asked me to do like a thing on bail reform. It's on my list. I'm going to do that as well. But this is such a big issue that I want to keep exploring. So again, like, share, subscribe, and I will definitely catch you all in the next one. Thanks, everyone. Have a great rest of your evening. Take care. More to come.